Welcome to N1's special report on Afghanistan. I'm Ika Ferrer-Gotic in Sarajevo. Entire families in Afghanistan have been forced to sell their kidneys so they can buy food as the country plunges deeper into a humanitarian crisis, new Sky News reports show. One family, including 3 brothers and 2 sisters, all underwent surgery and sold their organs for around £1,000 each in order to feed their relatives. For those who have already sold their kidneys to feed their starving families, many are resorting to selling their own children to survive because they have nothing left to sell as Afghanistan's economy is on the brink of collapse. The lives of Afghans under the new regime have dramatically worsened as they face increasing human rights violations. Since the Taliban took over Afghanistan in August last year, the international humanitarian aid has been put on hold, and the effects are deeply felt by families who cannot buy basic goods such as food. Sky News reporting.
They've all sold their kidneys to survive. The organ trade isn't new in Afghanistan, but it's just got more desperate. Every single person here is hungry, and poverty is driving already poor people to even more extreme measures. This man tells us we've no choice. We've already sold our kidneys. Now we've got to sell our children. And they're suffering terribly. The Taliban takeover meant a massive cut in aid, and these are people with few options. We've taken efforts to conceal their identities for their own safety. It's a highly conservative society, but I'm allowed into a room with the women. They agree to me filming their scars, some just a few months old. The women have sold their kidneys for less than the men, around $1,500 an organ. There's a lucrative trade with many organs going to Iran, but the money's still not enough. Most of these women are still teenagers with multiple babies but few rights. And now they're being forced to sell their children so they all have a better chance of survival. No one can tell me to sell my children, but we're struggling to keep them alive, she says. And that's why we've thought of selling them. Maybe better for them and we get food for the others. It is a tragic situation and one they see no quick end to.
There's a lot of women there who've sold their kidneys and now thinking of the last option, which is selling their children too.
The aid is fought over. What's here is far outweighed by the huge need. It's really very hard in Afghanistan right now, she says, and there are too many people like me who don't have a husband or a father to support them. For women who aren't allowed to work under the Taliban and aren't even allowed to complain about that, it's misery on misery. She's crying, telling us her bag of flour has been stolen. I don't know what I'm going to do, she says. Foreign aid's not feeding into the country whilst politicians wrestle over dealing with a Taliban regime holding power because they're holding the guns. You can ask everyone here, they're happy, this fighter says. Security's good. A man interrupts. Yes, security's good, but we don't have any money or food. The children's ward of Herat's burns unit is full. Little people horribly injured, trying to keep warm in midwinter. Aisha is in constant pain, with both hands and both feet very badly burned. Her family can't afford to pay for the dressings for her wounds, which are now infected. Without surgery in days, she'll die. But surgery comes at a cost they can't afford. And both her grandmother and her doctor know this probably seals her fate. She'll be taken home to die there.
I have a bad sensation because of lack of materials. I have the ability to treat him, but the lack of materials, the bad situation of economic of people, don't let me to help him as much as I can.
Back at the community outside Herat, where whole families have already sold their kidneys, we're with the village elder who's urgently trying to persuade this family not to sell one of their babies. I urge the world, please don't leave us alone, he says. Stop this tragedy when people are selling their children or part of their bodies. But both parents have already sold their kidneys. They've already lost a child who starved to death, and they still have 8 little mouths to feed. I've already lost one. I can't see them all lose their lives, she says. At least someone else will feed them. These are decisions no parent wants to make. But hunger can break even a mother's bond with her babies. Alex Crawford, Sky News, Herat.
This was a Sky News report. I'm being joined by the amazing Afghan artist and journalist Fatima Hosseini from Paris, a US veteran with multiple tours to Afghanistan, policeman today, and fellow Bosnian Emir Hadjic from St. Louis, Missouri. Fatima and Emir, welcome to N1, and thank you both for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Fatima, we have spoken to each other earlier and on 2 occasions actually. Firstly, in the last hours of Taliban advancement in Kabul, I recall the uncertainty at the time. On the second occasion, just days after you have managed to flee Afghanistan, one of the evacuation planes. How does it feel looking back at that time from this perspective now? Now you are a successful, integrated European citizen.
Thank you so much for having me again, dear Ika. Actually, now I feel a little better after all this happens to me and to Afghanistan. And I'm trying to deal with the situation, but it's still every time and every day something happened that it caused to take me back to Kabul and to what happened to me. And you know, as I worked and as I talked a lot about women of Afghanistan and the situation, and all my works and photos are about Afghanistan, even during my exhibitions, during my works, and everything is take me back to Afghanistan, take me back to where I am from and where I am belong to and what is happening now. So now I feel a little better, actually. I'm trying to settle and I'm trying to deal with it and accept the new life and to have my new rules and new plans for life. But I can't say that I can forget it, because every day I think it becomes deeper and deeper from every side. And I feel this empty place in my heart, and I can feel this pain even much more deeper than before.
How does it feel seeing these pictures coming from Afghanistan every day, especially the Sky News report that we've just seen?
It's so heartbreaking. Actually, it's so heartbreaking because I don't know, how, I mean, everything changed so fast, and still, we are all in shock that, how it all happens in 2022, when all the international community, when all around the world are talking about humanity, but there is a real humanity crisis is happening in Afghanistan, and all around the world just closed their doors to us, as I told you, the night before the fall of Kabul. That in that time I was so hopeful, and I told you, Ika, that I hope that the world don't leave us, but of course they did. And now you can see that we are in the middle of a humanity crisis, economic crisis in Afghanistan. But there are so many reports about it. But of course, there are so many places and countries that they are trying to help, as we see that a delegation from Taliban members came to Norway to talk about this humanity crisis. And of course, all the UN agencies are coming back to Afghanistan, and I saw so many fundraisings plans. But the thing is that it's so it's much bigger than these things, and we really have to take it so serious. And especially this winter was one of the hardest winter for women, for people of Afghanistan. And when I see these reports, like it just hurts me every moment, and like I don't know what to do actually, and I just want to talk about it and keep talking about Afghanistan to increase the awareness and to really ask the people who are in power to really don't forget Afghanistan.
And this is the best thing that we can do, keep talking about the humanitarian crisis that is ongoing in Afghanistan. Emmett, I'm going to you with a couple of tours to Afghanistan and seeing the newest reports that are coming from that country, quite concerning reports. Can we say that the West has abandoned this country?
Hi, Ika and Fatima, you know, I can't describe just how heart-wrenching that video was, showing fine Afghan people with scars who are missing parts of their body, who are giving up their loved ones, their most important ones, because they can't feed them. And just this unfolding crisis, it's unbearable to watch, to people who managed to escape and to some of us who have actually served there and invested part of our life into prosperity of that country. Unfortunately, we lost the war. We've lost the war to Taliban, who are now in charge. And we are out here in the West anyways, trying to balance humanitarian efforts to feed the people of Afghanistan while at the same time not strengthening the position of the government that ultimately prevailed in the past 20 years of conflict in a great deal through terrorism. So I think it's going to be very important for nonprofits to remain engaged, for Afghan citizens who have managed to settle out in the West to keep the spotlight on Afghanistan, because I don't think West is forgotten, but it certainly will eventually, just like as it has with Bosnia, which was all over the news back in the 90s. And now even in my native Bosnia, there are many troubles that are unfolding simply because the world moved on. And the world will move on from Afghanistan. I just don't think they moved on as we speak right now.
And there are Afghan refugees in St. Louis where you live, Amir, now. Can you tell us a little bit more what's going on with them there and how they're being serviced at the moment?
Certainly. St. Louis City and St. Louis County, so greater St. Louis area government committed for up to 2,000 refugees to be initially settled after all of their vetting and screening is completed in numerous U.S. Army bases statewide. And we are receiving some of those refugees, and the response from the community has been phenomenal. The resettlement agency in St. Louis, called International Institute St. Louis, has gotten overwhelmed with the amount of goods that were being delivered by random citizens who just want to help out. And they ran into a warehousing problem to where to keep all of these goods and food and diapers and personal necessities. But one of the big problems that apparently local governments didn't realize is the housing crisis in the United States is far worse than we realized. And that's not just in St. Louis, that's in the entire country. I'm hearing from my friends on East Coast and West Coast who are helping with refugee settlement here in the United States, running into the same issues. There's simply no housing available for traditionally large Afghan families. And the areas that do actually have some real estate available are extremely dangerous. I mean, we're not going to take people who were brutalized in Kabul and take them to particular neighborhoods in our cities just for them to continue getting brutalized. That's not what we're going to do. So we are placing our new arrivals into the temporary facilities, such as long-term stay hotels, where at least they have a kitchenette. We have connected them with a number of nonprofits who are delivering food as needed. But there are some heartbreaking stories here in St. Louis as well, where I just recently learned of a refugee family who did not know who to contact, so they ended up sustaining themselves on carrots for 3 days. Are you kidding me? They moved to the United States, the El Dorado, and they are sustaining themselves on carrots for 3 days. That's unacceptable. So we got to do better, and we are going to continuously get better here.
That is absolutely and definitely one of the main topics of international humanitarian law that has to be upheld and respected. Now, Fatima, CNN's Anna Corin, she reported on the humanitarian crisis engulfing Afghanistan, your country, as desperate families say they're being forced to sell their young daughters in order to survive. Now you're in Paris now, you're in Europe now, but and we've spoken on this topic so many times about the women's rights and children's rights. What do you think your life would be if you had stayed, if you didn't have the chance to embark on that evacuation plane that left Kabul in August?
It is very hard to talk about it because like now, even I left Afghanistan, I fled Afghanistan because of that crazy situation, but still sometimes I really feel like a guilty survivor, and I can't stop thinking about all those women who cannot make it happen. And if I couldn't live, I am sure that like, I don't know, like even if I could be alive and if I could continue my voice and my way as an artist and to work even there. Because you can see, like every day, women are in the streets of Kabul for protest and for asking for their rights. But we could see that how Taliban treat them. And like just 3 days ago, I saw a video of a lady that she was in the protest and Taliban was behind her door, and she just recorded a video and just published it. And like, I just tried to ask about this lady, that where is she? And now nobody is responsible and take the responsibility to say that where is this girl? And you can see that it's there is no freedom of speech now in Afghanistan, and there is no space for women, and there is no space for asking for our rights and for freedom. So like, even if I couldn't leave Afghanistan, I'm sure that maybe if I could be alive, I couldn't continue my way on, or even if I attended to the different protests, I could see the new challenges that the women of Afghanistan now are facing. And the economic crisis, of course, can be another thing that's really, it's heartbreaking to think about it. But the thing is that I don't know, like, how we can say about these things, and we have to blame, because when we see that even like some of those women of Afghanistan, that they are just talking about the humanity crisis, that now it's the time to stop fighting and to like just help the people of Afghanistan, not of course not through Taliban, but of course through the different agencies and non-profit organization in Afghanistan. But still, I can see so many people that I can understand them, and I have the same feeling that they are against these things, that even talk to Taliban, even negotiate, even talking about and asking them about this crisis that is happening. So the situation is very, very, very exotic and very heartbreaking and very crazy now. And I don't know really, I have no idea what is going to happen, because now, like, Taliban is not just Taliban 20 years ago. They are very smarter than before, and they know that the importance of PR. They know how to talk, and they know how to hide everything that they are doing in Afghanistan. So it becomes so harder to even negotiate with them, to think about it, and to even ask for like freedom, ask for women's rights, and many things that we had before.
And this is an interesting point, Fatima. You say, I feel like a guilty survivor. Now, Emir, this is something that refugees often, especially women, often feel. I felt like that. I felt that way when I was a refugee. My mother felt that way when she was a refugee. You were a refugee too, Emir. That's something that we share together. Now, you've been, Emir, to Afghanistan on multiple tours. Have you ever could imagine that U.S. will leave this way and in this manner, and to evacuate the entire staff just in a matter of days, and we see where is the trigger of the international response to this crisis that we're seeing right now. When you were there, how was it at the time, and could you have imagined that this would be the case that we're seeing today in Afghanistan?
Watching people selling their organs and selling their children, no, not in a million years. I understand that something like that has happened.
Where did we go wrong, Amir?
I believe that we went wrong when we decided to have no strategy of mission completion. Simply, we remained over there too long. I think after coalition forces accomplished their initial mission set, which is to dislodge and destroy Al-Qaeda and never allow Afghanistan to use that country as a place of operations to attack homeland, we should have pulled out and let the Afghans figure out themselves. Unfortunately, we overstayed and simply made local government, not just government in Kabul, but also provincial capitals, very dependent, almost addicted to American international aid. So they had very little incentive to set up a self-sustaining economic system in order to feed their families and feed their people. And now we see the outcome of that all. I got to tell Fatima that survivor's guilt is normal. I felt it, Ika felt it. I especially felt it after Tuzla shelling in the Old Town when a number of my friends were killed. And that happened only a matter of few weeks after I left the country, and it tore me up. But it also motivated me never to forget where I came from, and also serve as unofficial ambassador. Wherever you go, Fatima, whether you like it or not, you will be ambassador of your people. And there are many, many influential individuals, many leaders of nonprofit organizations who want to help. They're looking for people like you. They were looking for people like me, and I hope I contributed in my small way in the past. But in order to overcome your survivor's guilt, you have to stay engaged. You have to continue helping those who need help that you can help. And perhaps that's the reason why I chose public service as not a career choice, really, but a lifestyle.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's so well said. Fatima, would you like to add something to that?
Thank you very much for your words. And yes, I know this is not easy, and still, like, between all my works that I'm doing, that I am trying to survive and I'm trying to deal with this situation. But as I said, everything take me back to Afghanistan, and like sometimes when I am really in peace, but not inside, you know, like, between everything that is happening, it's like I feel more guilty, because when I see like what is going in Afghanistan, and I have my studio in Paris, I'm trying to deal with this situation. I have my friends, I am safe, but why they don't deserve to have it? Like this is a very hard time, but I'm trying to keep talking about Afghanistan and trying to keep working for Afghanistan, as I am not in Afghanistan now, but from here. And tomorrow I am going to Brussels, to European Union, to talk as an Afghan woman artist on behalf of women artists in Afghanistan. And I'm just trying to keep it. And now with my work in European Parliament, in bigger platforms, and in the platform that ICA make it, thank you very much. And it means a lot to me. At least if we don't have the power to do anything in Afghanistan, but at least we are talking about it, and we are keep increasing the awareness. And I'm so blessed to have you, Ikan. Thank you very much for everything.
No, don't thank me. Thank you. And what Amir already said, for you, you are already doing a lot. If we only go through your social media and we see how much you speak on the issues that are ongoing in Afghanistan, how much you are such an amazing ambassador for women in your country, and your work and your art, it takes a lot of courage to do that. And you haven't stopped doing that, even from the first first day you managed to escape Afghanistan and all the horrors that were there and that are ongoing right now, and you haven't rested not even for 1 minute. You went on and you are still doing it. And I didn't know about you going to Brussels and doing this. That will definitely turn more eyes towards Afghanistan. This is exactly what this country needs right now. Emmett, John Kirby, Pentagon spokesman, he said that the protection of civilians remain vital to the ultimate success of the operations. And the secretary has noted more on this occasion in the strategic and moral imperative. Will this trigger, now we are going back to the international response, will this trigger finally the international response, and what would international response towards Afghanistan would be and should be, just taken in consideration that in August last year all the foreign ambassadors left the country. Now what is there to be done now?
Sunday marks 6 months since the fall of Kabul and start of non-combatant evacuation operation from there. I don't see international community coming back to Afghanistan in great numbers militarily, no matter what's happening. Perhaps there will be some humanitarian relief through airdrops and things of that nature. But I think the key will not necessarily be foreign governments, but rather nonprofit organizations, because that will enable foreign governments to save face and, have plausible deniability that they are aiding Taliban regime that's currently in power in the country. So I think the key will be to keep those nonprofit organizations sending aid to Afghanistan for these folks to get through this winter. But that's not sustainable forever. I think once security...
But that's the point. You see, that's the point. Now, the Taliban, unless they are being recognized, unless their regime and the new government of Afghanistan, which is Taliban, is being recognized, the aid, humanitarian aid, will not be able to get to the citizens. Now, how to choose between recognizing such regime that is violating all human rights and getting the humanitarian aid to the citizens?
Well, I suppose we would have to deal with them the same way we deal with other rogue regimes, be it North Korea or any other, like Libya prior to the civil war over there. It's going to be tough politically. And that's why I continuously keep going back to these non-governmental organizations. I think they're going to be the key, because I don't believe that Western governments are going to recognize Taliban as legitimate until they have some form of elections. But, we cannot impose our style of governance to other parts of the world. I mean, we certainly tried in Afghanistan. It worked for a while, but ultimately it failed due to way more other elements involved there. And the geopolitical situation, not just in Afghanistan, but in entire Central Asia. I think what we're seeing happening in Ukraine and what is probably going to occur in Taiwan in short order is totally going to distract the global community from suffering in Afghanistan. But if the governments are not going to pay attention, let's make sure the non-government organizations pay attention to Afghanistan. We got to keep them on task. And I think one of the ways we do that is through simple everyday activism, simply making phone calls, sending emails, keeping your social media engaged on this topic will help.
Absolutely. Fatima, Taliban said that they would go easy on women. Now we're going back to the women's rights and the position of women in Afghanistan, in today's Afghanistan. They said they would go easy on women and children, girls, but obviously that was another misleading promise that they gave. Fatima, what is the future of women there? You taking in consideration knowing what the present is.
The situation of women of Afghanistan, like as we talked, since the time that they took over Kabul till now, we can see that what are they doing with women of Afghanistan and how they are treating, and like in which case they believe in women's rights. Like in the first month of their arrival, they just closed the Ministry of Women Affairs, and you saw that they just banned girls from going back to school, and they just banned women to go back to work. And as I know, like my students in Kabul University, any of them can go back to university, and so many other students that I know that they couldn't go back and they can't go back to work actually. So, but this is very unfair, and everybody knows that this is the real ideology of Taliban, because 20 years ago they were the same. They made so many promises. They said that it takes time to provide and to make everything possible for women to go back to work and school, but they didn't. And now they are doing the same, and it's more than 100 days that teenagers cannot go back to school. And as we said, they just removed and they just fired all the women who were in the high positions in the government. So as I think and as I know and as we see during 20 years ago, and how Taliban treated women 20 years ago when they were in power, and now, so it is so clear that there is no space, there is no more space for women during Taliban regime. And I think it will get worse and worse every day, because their ideology is against these things. The ideology is against women's freedom. And as I said always, I don't know, actually they are, of course, they are afraid of women's power, because as I see, most of the Taliban rules, actually, of course, they are against, they are targeting minorities and so many other things in Afghanistan. But the special target are women. We can see that the real victims now in this war are women. About the economic crisis, about the going back to works, about destroying whatever, and their achievements that they achieved, actually in the past 2 decades. So, of course, as I said, there is no more space for women of Afghanistan during Taliban regime.
And they said that they would go easy. They said they promised so many things, and the international community promised that it would be better. Now, we've been talking about this for half a year now, and Emir, you are involved in it very much, and none of the promises given have been taken seriously even. But Fatima, will you ever be able, and under what circumstances would you be able to go back to Afghanistan?
Unfortunately, for now, as I got my asylum, I got a paper that it's written that you can travel all around the world except Afghanistan. And it was one of the heartbreaking time that I had, and especially the moment that I just gave my passport and ID card for getting the new French documents. And it was very heartbreaking for me that this is the name that I'm carrying. This is the nationality and the identity that I'm carrying with myself till now. But now there is no documents to show that where I am belong to and where I came from. And yes, I can. This was the most heartbreaking time that for now, and I don't know till when. Till the time that Afghanistan is not safe for me, I cannot travel and I cannot go back to Afghanistan.
Emir, we mentioned now the economic crisis and the catastrophes imminent. So in August last year, the United States froze $9.1 billion of Afghanistan's national reserves held at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. As a result, the economic situation in the country has deteriorated rapidly. Now, the people of Afghanistan are increasingly unable to afford basic goods. Its currency is facing hyper depreciation, and its already fragile economy is on the brink of collapse. Now, the U.S. can help and allow some money of the Afghan national reserves to be used for the economic stabilization under strict control. Why isn't U.S. doing this?
Well, because of the reports that we're receiving from the country, the massive human rights abuses at hands of current government. I mean, if we started putting that money into circulation, that would give Taliban zero incentive to stop with their human rights abuses and abuses of women over there. And I don't know. I believe that Western government, not just American government, but Western governments need to really get together and figure this out and see where they stand, because it is really two bad choices. If they release some of the funds, that will temporarily relieve some of the suffering in Afghanistan. However, it will give current Afghan government zero incentive to stop with executions that they are committing in rural parts of Afghanistan. You know, thankfully, we are not seeing rivers of blood flowing through Kabul like we were afraid of. But there are massive human rights abuses happening throughout the entire country. I'm also getting reports of a possibility of another civil war. Apparently, General Dostum is assembling his forces, and they're going to try to carve out part of Afghanistan. So I'm not sure that releasing of some of those funds will ultimately help. Again, that's why I keep going back to non-governmental, non-profit involvement. I believe that there is still enough interest in those communities to provide help where Western governments cannot. But in order for them to do that, I believe it is our job. It is a job of people like Fatima to get on those organizations, talk to them, advocate. You know, perhaps on election day, majority rules. But every other day, it's the activism.
Activism of people like you, Amir, especially you, Fatima. You are leaving to Brussels in a day. What will you be talking about and to the officials? And you met many officials over the course of time. What do they usually tell you when you tell them that women's rights are on the brink of collapse, and they have collapsed? They are not being upheld, and the women are basically invisible in Afghanistan. What do they tell you usually?
Yes, actually, this is the time that Afghanistan, like everybody is trying to talk about Afghanistan, but for me, I think celebrating some like few Afghan women who could leave Afghanistan and who are like a little power in hand is not the how can I say, is not the reason that you can do something for Afghanistan. I think now the women who couldn't get out from Afghanistan are the most important thing that we have to do something for them. But I don't say this to ignore that we can forget the women here with the new challenges in exile. But like, I'm happy now that I'm gonna show the last series that I could work in Afghanistan, and like, I'm happy that I can talk about art and with the soft power of art about the women of Afghanistan in European Parliament, and to show my works and to talk with whoever I will meet, because they are just dedicating a day for women of Afghanistan, and I will see so many more Afghan women there. But the thing is that I hope the world and the Westerns and like all around the world that celebrating few women of Afghanistan, they don't forget the real thing the real crisis that is happening for our women of Afghanistan already, and they do something for them. And of course I will talk about it, and whatever I hear about them is that we are here behind the women of Afghanistan. We will support you, and just tell us like how we can help. You know, dear Ika, now the problem is that unfortunately, because the economic collapse in Afghanistan, like, it is very hard time. I had a plan to sell some of my works and send half of the money for all those families those who sell their children. But the problem is that now even sending money to Afghanistan is a big problem, because there is no bank, there is no Western Union, and there's no money even to give. And I have to give it through a journalist, or I don't know what. But the thing is that how we can trust the locals or the other organization. Of course, they don't have the time to do that, and they don't go to in the middle of society to do that, to even give the money to all those families. I mean, the situation is very, very tough now. And even when I was thinking about how I can help through my art and through my way, I couldn't make it, to be honest. I couldn't make it, and still I'm fighting with, and I'm trying to find a way, a better way to make it happen. So the thing is that we just have to ask the people, the organization, the governments who have the power in hand and who can do something really can do something for women of Afghanistan and all those who are still in Afghanistan.
Incredible. Emir, one last question for you. Now we're mentioning who is there to be blamed and what can we do actually about that? Who is to be blamed? I think we pretty much already know. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on the global community to lead the progress in the country and provide resources. And now we're going back, of course, to the humanitarian organizations and the activists. What do you think now the story of Afghanistan is slowly getting out of the public eye, and we see other crises going on in the world? What would you like to see happening for Afghanistan? What do you think will happen for Afghanistan by the end of this year?
Well, it's difficult to predict because of the situation in the world vis-a-vis, the big game of the world powers. We all watch the news, you see what's going on. Eyes are pretty much off Afghanistan already, as it is, comparatively speaking, to the last year. So I think it's the job of us, friends of Afghanistan. I think it's the job of Afghans who live abroad to keep the spotlight on that country and on those people's suffering. All of us that have some form of platform, I think it is our responsibility to speak out and speak up and keep the attention on Afghanistan until there are some lasting resolutions implemented over there. Also, I implore all of my American friends to continue their activism and continue pressuring U.S. Congress to provide better support for our newly arrived Afghans. So I personally have written to all of my representatives and senators to support the Afghan Adjustment Act. It is something that we're going to keep pushing in order for our newly arrived Afghans to have a better start and better shot at becoming good Americans. They're always going to remain Afghans, but we need to make them great Americans as well. So they need support there. So one day, once they develop expertise in whatever field of endeavor they can lend that help and support to their native country and hopefully bring it into 21st century with the rest of the world.
Thank you, Emir, for that. Fatima, what do you think should happen and should be the next step for your country when it comes to international community and, of course, like Emir said, the Afghans themselves?
About the international community, I just hope that, of course, they don't forget people of Afghanistan. But in the case of Taliban, I hope they don't recognize Taliban and they don't give them legitimacy. As we see that they killed people of Afghanistan, they did so many things during these past 2 decades. But we saw that Norway just sent a very special jet for them to invite Anas Haqqani, who were the responsible of an attack that happened a few years ago in Kabul, and 700 people died. 700 innocent people died in that explosion. And he took the responsibility. So for all of and he's in the list of UN sanction. So how we can expect that Europe let him to get inside Europe a real terrorist? So I hope that world don't recognize Taliban. But I know that we did think there is no way to help the people of Afghanistan, because when you don't recognize the government, so how we can do it? But like my words finished in this case, and actually the crisis in Afghanistan is very very heavy for all around the world, and of course for me much heavy, much worse than everything in the world. But I hope that yes, the world don't recognize these terrorists that just killed us in past 20 years, and now they are still killing us. Even if we are in Afghanistan, even if we are not in Afghanistan.
Those are heavy words, very truthful, heavy words. Emir, do you think that, and we discussed this before on our show together, you and I, the policy, the US policy, the UN policy is always you do not negotiate with the terrorists. And do you think that the world should then please the Taliban's recommendations and the new government that Afghanistan is having right now, just taking in consideration exactly what Fatima just told us?
You know, you can not negotiating with terrorists. I think that's more of a theme and part of messaging rather than policy. We've seen time and time again where legitimate governments negotiate with illegitimate governments. We've seen time and again where we do negotiate with terrorists and come to certain resolution. And again, I think there is a way to negotiate this in order to find some kind of at least temporary solution. And I'm totally supportive of talking to Taliban on those terms. That does not necessarily mean that we fully recognize them, because we kind of recognize them in a way already as a de facto government and somebody that we have to deal with if we care about those that they rule now. And why do we care? Well, probably because we have invested so much treasure and so much blood to make that country prosperous and stable. But then again, you also have the neighboring nations, and you have their influences and their interests over there as well. So it's not all just on Western governments. I believe China has certain responsibility, and I understand certain designs. I'm sure they're going to build very nice roads to every Afghan mine or other infrastructure project that's going to help exploit those natural resources, despite the fact that Americans were the ones being accused of exploiting natural resources. But something's got to get going. And I think whoever is in charge in Kabul has to be negotiated with in one form or another. But that does not mean that we put them on the pedestal and, accept them as the only solution.
As the only solution. I will conclude with that. Emir, thank you very much. And Fatima, thank you so much for being on this show again. And like you said, we have to keep Afghanistan in the public eye. We have to continue having these conversations because people are the most vulnerable, are actually the ones that are suffering the most. Emir, thank you so much. And Fatima, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. CNN's Nakon reports on the humanitarian crisis engulfing Afghanistan as desperate families say they're being forced to sell their young daughters in order to survive.
In this arid, desolate landscape, not a scrap of vegetation in sight, lies a makeshift camp for some of Afghanistan's internally displaced. Among its residents, 9-year-old Pawana. Her bright pink dress squeals of laughter and childhood games, a ruse to the horrors unfolding in this unhospitable environment. Pawana's family moved to this camp in Baghdis province 4 years ago after her father lost his job. Humanitarian aid and menial work, earning $3 a day, providing the basic staples to survive. But since the Taliban takeover 2.5 months ago, any money or assistance has dried up. And with 8 mouths to feed, Parwana's father is now doing the unthinkable. I have no work, no money, no food. I have to sell my daughter, he says. I have no other choice. Parwana, who dreams of going to school and becoming a teacher, applies makeup. A favourite pastime for little girls, but Parwana knows she is preparing for what awaits her. My father has sold me because we don't have bread, rice and flour. He has sold me to an old man. The white-bearded man, who claims he's 55 years old, comes to collect her. He's bought Parwana for 200,000 Afghanis, just over $2,000 US. Covered up, Parwana whimpers as her mother holds her. This is your bride, please take care of her, says Parwana's father. Of course I will take care of her, replies the man. His large hands grab her small frame. Parwana tries to pull away. As he carries her only bag of belongings, she again resists, digging her heels into the dirt. But it's futile. The fate of this small, helpless child has been sealed. Child marriage is nothing new in poor rural parts of Afghanistan. But human rights activists are reporting an increase in cases because of the economic and humanitarian crisis engulfing the country.
These are devastating decisions that no parent should ever have to make, and it really speaks to what an extraordinary breakdown is happening in Afghanistan right now.
For months, the UN has been warning of a catastrophe as Afghanistan, a war-ravaged, aid-dependent country, descends into a brutal winter. Billions of dollars in central bank assets were frozen after the Taliban swept to power in August. Banks are running out of money, wages haven't been paid for months, while food prices soar. According to the UN, more than half the population doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. And more than 3 million children under the age of 5 face acute malnutrition in the coming months.
People of Afghanistan need a lifeline.
And while $1 billion has been pledged by UN donors to help the Afghan people, less than half those funds have been received as the international community holds off recognising the Taliban government.
People of Afghanistan will be dying of hunger in the next couple of months, and not just a few. This is just making people more and more vulnerable. And we cannot accept that.
Sentiments shared by the Taliban.
We are asking aid agencies to come back to Afghanistan and help these poor people. Otherwise, the crisis will worsen.
For this family in neighbouring Gore province, they are trying to sell 2 daughters, 9-year-old Litan and 4-year-old Zeton, for $1,000 US each. Do you know why they're selling you? The journalist asked Zeton. Because we are a poor family and don't have any food to eat, she says. Are you scared, he asks. Yes, I am. Another family in Gore province borrowed money from their 70-year-old neighbour. Now he's demanding it back, but they have nothing to give, except their 10-year-old daughter, Magul. My daughter doesn't want to go and is crying all the time. I am so ashamed, he says. Terrified, she threatens to take her life. If they push me to marry the old man, I will kill myself. I don't want to leave my parents. Days later, she discovers the sale has been finalised. Another Afghan child sold into a life of misery.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the Security Council that 6 months after the takeover by the Taliban, Afghanistan is hanging by a thread adding that for Afghans, daily life has become a frozen hell. Addressing the Council on 26th of January, Guterres said over half the Afghan population was facing extreme levels of hunger, facing the harsh winter and drought, and stalked by COVID-19 and preventable diseases like diarrhea and even polio. He said education and social services are on the brink of collapse as well. He added that terrorism also remains a constant threat, not only to the security of Afghanistan, but to the entire world. Guterres called on the global community to lead progress in the country and provide resources.
We urge the Taliban to seize this moment and garner international trust and goodwill by recognizing and upholding the basic human rights that belong to every girl and woman.
Secretary General, for your sobering...
In the depths of a frigid Afghan winter, renewal and hope can seem distant. For decades, even centuries, Afghanistan has been unfairly used as a platform for political agendas, geopolitical advantage, ideological dominance, and brutal conflicts and terrorism. As a matter of moral responsibility and regional and global security and prosperity, we cannot abandon the people of Afghanistan. They need peace, they need hope, they need help, and they need it now.
Almost 6 months after the fall of Kabul, nations around the world have yet to recognize the new Taliban government. The lives of Afghans under the new regime have dramatically worsened as they face increasing human rights violations. Worldwide public witnessing the extreme poverty that has resulted from lack of aid, which has led to some Afghans taking unprecedented steps to survive. Afghans make up one of the largest refugee populations worldwide. There are 2.6 million registered Afghan refugees in the world. Another 3.5 million people are internally displaced, having fled their homes, searching for refuge within the country. I'm Ika Ferrer-Gotic. Thank you for watching.